I'm only here for God. I'm only here for God. Can somebody say that? I'm only here for God. That's the only thing there is. The only power, the only present, that one allness in which we live, move, and have our being. Oh, I get so excited about that. Because, it helps you to move through spaces differently when you know that you are only here for God, that all you ever meet is God. All you ever meet is God. And so I am so excited. Let them hear. Let them hear. This week, I'm excited, right? I always get excited when I get a chance to talk. Y'all know that, right? And so all of this week, I have been thinking about this idea of let them hear. Let them hear. And the question I had was, what is that about? So it came from that scripture that Jesus said, he who hath an ear, let him hear. And so it was interesting to me because one of the things that I'm back in my Bible metaphysical class, and one of the things that I was thinking about was, this idea of how information was shared. A lot of times we look at the stories and the teachings of Jesus and we look at it from the perspective of now how we communicate and share ideas versus how they did back then. And a lot of times it was in the center of town or, the Sermon on the Mount or somebody going out into a boat or whatever it was. The ability to share was very different than it is now. And so as I look at the teachings of Paul, it reminds me a lot of the philosophy that I've read, how people used to come into the circle and debate ideas and talk about different things. And so I kept thinking to myself, the only way that people really had, because paper was not like it is today, right? People didn't have paper just to write notes and jot down things. A lot of times we lose track of the idea that they're not sitting up reading 10 books and coming out then and having this conversation. They are going into places and spaces where they're having these conversations. And so the conversation is that I'm telling you, Jesus and Paul and all the others are telling us information. And in order to receive it, we have to actually hear it. Now, there is this thing that I recognize that there is an involuntary part of hearing. I unfortunately stay in one of those older houses where y'all know I pivot a lot, right? So stay with me. I went to my family reunion this past weekend, and it was out in Dover, Delaware. Out in the country, just beautiful acres of land and all of this stuff. And all I could hear was the crickets. And I thought, how beautiful and how nice, right? My house, I hear crickets, but I also sit there and think, oh, I hear an argument going on over next door. Can't quite make out what it is, but I'm hearing, I hear all kind of stuff. I hear cars going by, I hear. And so a lot of times we don't have that ability to go in the door and shut the door and the world be closed off to us. Some people get in a fancy car and your cars will mute out the sounds outside. But some of us are bombarded day in and day out by noise. Not just the noise that goes on in your own head, but the noise in your environment around you. And so what happens is that we hear a lot of things, but the question becomes, are we listening? And I don't know if you understand that there's a distinction that we hear, but listening is a different type of activity, right? It means that what we have coming in, we actually need to understand, or we need to process it so that it is not just something that just comes in, but rather, just like our food, some of it nourishes us. Some of it finds place within our being. Some of it lands in us in a very deep way. And then sometimes things just, they're gone. They come and they go, just like that. Oh, this guy told me that, but they come and they go, right? It is one of those types of things. So when I started thinking about Jesus saying, "He who hath an ear, let him hear," I wanted to stop and really ponder, what does that mean? What does that mean for us, right? We can have very good hearing, right? Like they talk about bats, and bats have this wonderful way of hearing that allows them to zero in on things. My dog can start barking 5 minutes before the other dog comes walking down the street. And I'm wondering, how did you know, right? But he gets reactive about those things. So when I think about this idea of, it's not about how well you hear, but how deeply you're able to hear, to understand, and to either allow something to take root in you or to pluck it up like a weed and toss it away. So as I thought about this whole thing, I kept thinking, what is it that we're not hearing? Now, here's part of what I wanted to say today. Now, y'all know I could be long-winded. I'm trying not to be. I really think that there's a talent in being succinct, right? Succinct and just kind of getting to the point. I'm not that girl. I feel like sometimes I go around the world, right? Over the mountains and through the woods and all of that stuff. I sometimes do that because it just, there you go. It's the way that it lands on me. And so when I started thinking about this idea of what is it that really wanted to come through me, so here's the thing. I constantly find myself saying to people that the real awareness and understanding of God is not to be found in a book. Now, some of y'all might get mad at me because, the Bible being the unadulterated word of God, and we've got to revere it. But what I need you to see is that God is seeking you. Always. In all ways. I got to tell y'all this quick story. So I told y'all I went to Dover, Delaware, driving through. And Dover, Delaware, just a nice little city, right? And, I'm driving and I'm trying to get to the coast. I wanted to drive to a beach. And I've got folks in the car with me. But now I had been praying because they had asked me to speak at my family reunion. And I thought to myself, okay, what am I going to talk about? And so I kind of was going through all of these different types of things, all these thoughts in my mind. I've done a lot of ancestry work in my family line, and there was some stuff I was thinking to myself, I'm gonna bring this up, I'm gonna dig this up, and nobody's been talking about this, that, and the other. And so I was just thinking to myself, when I get up, am I going to talk about this, right? I was like, ooh, this is good. Nobody else is going to have the courage to say what I can say. And I'm thinking this in my mind, but at the same time, I'm saying, God, guide my feet. So here I am that morning, and I'm driving, trying to get to the coast, and I'm just driving this little, whatever that is. It's a Kia, I think. I'm driving the car, and I could hear my aunts in the back seat talking, and my sister is sitting next to me, but I'm in my own little world. I'm driving, and there's cornfields on either side. Cornfields just, I'm just driving through. And out of nowhere, there's this bird that comes and it flies right and does right into the front of my car. Bam! I look out the rearview mirror and I see the bird as it flies, and then it tumbles a couple of times and then it stops. He who hath an ear, let him hear. Now, many folks would have drove on, I did drive on, but many folks would have drove on and thought nothing of it. But what I recognized was God is trying to tell me something right now. And sometimes there is no other way to reach you other than to slam dead smack into you. Sometimes we think that the things that come up in our lives come up, oh, this was an accident. It was everything. God moves in and through everything to communicate with you. But he who has an ear will hear. And so our ears are not just about what we do with these two things. Sometimes it's about what we see, what pops out at you, right? What's seeking your attention? What is it that you just, whether it was a bird that was crashing into your car or one that's on the side of the road, what's speaking to you? Sometimes it's your nose, it's a scent, it's a smell. How often? I don't know if anybody ever does this, but sometimes I walk into a room and I smell my mother there. And my mother's been gone for a long time. And it makes you stop in your tracks and think, wait a minute. I don't know about y'all, but I want to back up and I need to take it in again. Because apparently there's something I'm missing. Sometimes we get a feeling. I don't know about, right? Sometimes we get this feeling that resonates deep down within us. How is it that you hear? And are you able to be transformed by what you hear? Are you able to, in the moment of your hearing, to stop and say, wait a minute, what's on my mind? To get curious and to ask questions. To see what it is that Spirit might be trying to say to you and trying to get through to you that you may be missing somewhere along the path. You see, what I know is that a lot of times when we're trying to do all of this work, trying to get all this information in, the real stuff is not the stuff that you're reading on the book. It's the experience that you're having. When's the last time you tried to listen with your heart? Right? And there is a thing of where you can drop your attention into that heart space and to really listen and see what it is that is trying to be said to and through you. Sometimes you're listening to me or to somebody else or to another conversation, and you got stories that's popping up in your head, things that happened to you in your past. And rather than just ignore it and think, get out of here, like it's a little fly that's buzzing around your head, it's trying to tell you something too. You see, what the thing is that most of us miss that Jesus told us that the kingdom of heaven is spread out before you. It is you. It is moving in and through you at every moment of every day. But if you're not making room for it, because you're looking down at your book, you might miss it. So for me, of course, it changed around what it was that I was going to talk about, right? I started thinking to myself, okay, this is not mine to do, not mine, right? And so the way that we bring meaning and interpretation to the things that we hear matters. And so when we come into these places, into these spaces, community matters. And so I may sound like I'm kind of like saying something is inherently wrong with just getting our information from the book. That's not what I'm saying, right? I've been working on a book forever. But what happens is that when we come and we read somebody else's experience, we get to see how it is that they have brought meaning to what it is that they have witnessed, what they managed to do. And then if they can show you through what they've been through, then it'll help you in what you're going through. I had a lady in one of my yoga classes who got mad at me for sharing some information. She was like, everybody's body is not the same. I'm not saying that. I mean, you see mine, right? I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that if I've got some information that I think that might be helpful to you, who am I to withhold that? Freely I received, and freely I give. So if I'm sharing with somebody, it is out of the depth of my own experience, what I found to be true. I share from that. I pour forth from that. And the more I pour, the more I find out that I get. I receive. And so I keep pouring. She got mad. She was like, oh, you know. I'm going to tell you, Rose, though, she pulled a fast one on me. We were talking about eating bread, and I was telling her, because she was talking about how much. I said, well, why don't you try giving up bread? I eat wheat bread. It's the best thing for you. Sorry, y'all. It's the best thing for you. I said, who told you that? And she said, the Bible says. I said, the Bible wasn't talking about the bread you eating today. The Bible didn't know nothing about Wonder Bread. But it was okay. It was okay, really, it was okay. I was just trying to tell her what I found worked. But she got mad. But what we do is we give from the wealth of our own experience. And sometimes we've got this thing where we try not to share, or, we think that we're doing other people a favor when we don't give like little tidbits that we've learned that work. I tried that. And I felt like I was betraying my own self, because there really is only one of us here. And that whole Bible was somebody else's experience that they thought could help you with yours. And so it becomes this thing of us pouring out into each other, not with this effort that you got to do what I say do. No. But there is something, I think, a blessing in being able to share, to give. Freely you have received, now freely you give, right? To give as we have received. It becomes part of our own personal ministry. So this, sometimes what people will do, they will be transformed through their hearing of your experience. That's really what all this is about. And we come together in community, and we talk about ways of living our lives, of modifying, of doing the things that we need to do in order to elevate and lift, or to make our path straighter. You see, all of us, we may think that our lives are different, but all of us go through pretty much the same process. I can assure you, just like I use the bathroom, y'all do too, right? I gain weight or I lose weight, y'all do too. We need to exercise. We got blood going through everything. Maybe the details are a little different, right? But all of us are here in this community for each other. And so when we stop getting these ideas of separation and letting separation rule us, what we do is we get this thing called unity, which is what God is, which is love, which is the point of all of this. He who hath an ear, let him hear. I got some other things that I was supposed to share, but I think that's where I'm supposed to call it done. But I want you to think about, as you move forward, that everything, you know how they say, God is trying to tell you something, right? Everything. I don't care if it's a grasshopper. It's got a message for you, if you would but hear. That's what I got. Blessings to you.